Welcome back. My name is Jim Caseman. We're talking about biblical faith. And we not only started by teaching it the traditional way, defining faith and all of that, but in addition to that, now we're taking certain subjects and illustrating how it's only by faith that we can understand, because the subjects are in the spiritual realm and they affect us in the natural realm. So we need to understand it, but the only way we can is by faith. For example, now we've come to where we talked about man was created in God's own image and likeness so he could have eternal fellowship with God. But now man also was given dominion. And then it says Adam, by creation, had the ability to rule the universe. And of course, we come right all the way back here to Psalms chapter 8 and pick it up in verse 1. Psalms, so we are. Psalms 8 and 1. O Lord our God, O Lord our God, how excellent is your name in all the earth, who have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babes and nursing infants you have ordained strength or perfected praise. Because of your enemies, that you may silence the enemy and the avenger. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have ordained, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you should visit him? For you've made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all the sheep and oxen, even the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and of course the fish of the sea that pass through the paths of the seas. O Lord our God, how excellent is your name in all of the earth. And then we come all the way up here to Hebrews chapter 2, and where we go, and we'll pick it up in verse 5, 2 and 5. For he has not put the world to come, of which we speak, in subjection to angels, but one testified in a certain place, saying, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you take care of him? You have made him a little lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor, and set him over the works of your hands. You have put all things in subjection under his feet. For in that he put all things in subjection under him, he left nothing that is not put under him. But now we do not see all things put under him. But we see Jesus, who is made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by grace of God, might taste death for everyone. And of course, we see here that man was created lower than God, and now Jesus comes in the earth, the form of a human being, and now he's made lower than the angels, and of course, he suffered death for us, as we see here as well. So we see both. And then, of course, Adam was an under-ruler, I guess you'd call it, an under-ruler and a companion of God. And again, we saw that in Psalms 8 and 5, which we just read. All right, so man was given dominion over everything that you see in this physical dimension, and to rule the universe, this physical dimension. Now that was in the beginning. And then, of course, man had to be tested. We see in Deuteronomy 30 and 19, coming back to Deuteronomy 30, here we go, 30 and verse 19, I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life, that both you and your descendants may live. And so here we have the power to make a decision, whether we're going to choose life or choose death. And in case we don't know what the best decision is, he goes on in verse 20 to tell us that you may love the Lord your God, that you may obey his voice, and that you may cling to him, for he is your life and the length of your days, and that you may dwell in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give them. So in other words, choose life, he said. that both you and your descendants may live. So he gives us a big tip right there. If you want to live, choose life. And so then we see then that man was given a free will. Now we were created in the image and likeness of God, as we already discussed, have his attributes and characteristics and everything. But then we were given a free will. And of course, God did not want robots. So he created man just a shade lower than him and gave him a free will so that he would have the power to choose. And obviously he gave the angels the same power to choose, because we see that he can create innumerable angels, Hebrews tells us. But then we see that Lucifer, one of the three big angels, I put it, he chose to rebel against God. And of course, he took a third of the angels with him, and they'll spend eternity separated from God in hell. So they were given a free will. See, God in his family, in his kingdom, nobody is forced to serve him. He's given angels and human beings a free will. And the only people you'll find in heaven are those who really love God and are really loyal and faithful to him because they want to, not because they're forced to. God won't force anything upon you. The devil will, but God's not going to force you to be loyal and faithful to him. We are tested in our time here in this physical dimension. We as human beings are having our free will tested. And of course, we see that happened with Adam and Eve in the garden, and where, of course, Eve was tempted, and Adam also then was tempted and ate of the fruit that Eve presented to him. Their wills were tested, and they blew it, and then they were separated from God. We also can see in Genesis chapter 22, and it comes right down here and talking about Abraham, and in verse 22. Now it came to pass, verse 1, after these things that God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. Then he said, take now your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one side of the mountain of which I shall tell you. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took two of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and he split the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. Then on the third day, Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the place afar off, and he said to his young men, stay here with the donkey, the lad, and I will go yonder and worship, and we will come back to you. So Abraham, see, he's talking by faith. He knows he's supposed to kill him, but he said, we'll come back. So Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering, laid it on Isaac his son, and he took the fire in his hand, and a knife, and the two of them went together. Isaac spoke to Abraham his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am, my son. Then he said, look, the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for a burnt offering? And Abraham said to him, my son, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering. So the two of them went together. Then they came to the place of which God had told him, and Abraham built an altar there and placed the wood in order, and he bound Isaac his son, laid him on the altar upon the wood, and Abraham stretched his hand out to take the knife to slay his son. But the angel of God called to him from heaven and said, Abraham! So he said, here I am. And he said, do not lay your hand on the lad or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you've not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And then Abraham lifted his eyes and looked, and there behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by the thorns. So Abraham went and took the ram, offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place, the Lord will provide, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. And then in another translation, in the Revised Standard Version, in verse 14, it said that he shall be seen on this mount. That was Mount Moriah. And so then he passed the test. He went all the way up to, got the sword up there. God said, don't touch him. You demonstrated that I can trust you. And his will was tested, and he passed the test. And so the new creation, through the new blood covenant, we are in blood covenant with God. And that's another subject which we won't get on, which we'll start in the next session. And so anyway, so we're created with a free will, and our will is going to be tested, and whether we're going to remain loyal or faithful to God. All right, so that's the end of this session. We'll look forward to seeing you in the next session. Meanwhile, you just be blessed richly in everything you set your hands to do, as we willingly Trust and obey God. Hallelujah.